Hi, I'm Greg Burgoon. I'm an associate director at Pivotal Labs. Pivotal Labs is a software consulting company. We have 10 locations in North America and 1 location in the UK. I'm based out of the office in Toronto, Canada. Basically I'm going to talk to you today about how we do Agile software development, specifically with mobile, out of our Toronto office. A little bit about me. So I studied computer science at the University of Waterloo. For those of you who don't know, Waterloo has one of the largest Oktoberfests outside of Germany. So if you're ever in Canada in October, I suggest you check it out. After graduating, I got into video game development on the west coast of Canada, and then eventually found myself into mobile application development at Extreme Labs, which was acquired by Pivotal Labs late last year. When I started at the company, we were probably around 10 engineers. And over the course of 4 or 5 years, I helped grow the engineering team out to 200 plus engineers. Now I'm a member of the engineering leadership team. I primarily focus on some of our financial and media clients, particularly mobile payments, and I also help coordinate some of our internal R&D efforts. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk a little bit about Pivotal Labs. So our mission statement is to transform how the world develops software. And we take this into consideration every time we go and work with a customer. We really try to help them transform their software development process into a more agile software development methodology. So we practice agile engineering, and a key component of that is pair programming. So for those of you who don't know, pair programming is you basically have 2 keyboards, 2 mice, 2 monitors, and there's 2 people. There's 2 people. But there's 1 computer. And you each take turns between driving and navigating. So the driver will be the person using the keyboard and the mouse, and the navigator will be thinking of higher level implementation details and architecture. Another key component on how we work is Pivotal Tracker. So Pivotal Tracker is our agile project management tool that we've built in-house for helping us manage projects in an agile way. So we primarily do weekly sprints, so they're very fast iterations, and we also value transparency and collaboration in our engagements with our customers, and this kind of comes out of the tool Pivotal Tracker. So basically, we go through, we'll build something for a week, QA it, then it goes out to the customer. Customer gives us some feedback, and we reprioritize that feedback along with the next set of features. And then we continue on week after week like that. So that's a little bit about Pivotal Labs. So as an agenda, I kind of like to go into a little bit more detail about how we work, a little bit more in depth about how Pivotal Tracker works, how we set up communications for our projects, how we do pair programming and some of the benefits of pair programming, as well as how we run projects and the cadence at which we run projects. So how we work. So we really try to make all the engineers in our company a master at their craft. And a key component of that is pair programming. So there's been some studies that have been done in universities, particularly with computer science programs, where they take a group of students and they'll have them pair on certain projects, and they'll have a separate group of students work on those projects solo. And what they've found is when it comes to final exams, the people that were in the pairing group end up doing better on the exams and have a higher proficiency. And I think that translates fairly well to practice in our development process. Another thing we value also is autonomy. So we try really hard not to micromanage people. And we really want to empower people to take ownership over what they're doing and encourage them to be responsible for what they're doing. Another thing is we also provide our engineers a great sense of purpose. They're working on mobile applications that are going to be used by millions of people. So it's a very, very good for job satisfaction and fulfillment. Another thing we also do is we try to remove processes as much as possible, because processes can kind of get in the way of being able to move quickly, which is a key component of Agile. So as a rule of thumb, we say that processes are to be implemented by those who are practicing it. And myself in general and how I work at the company, I'll fight fires. So basically, there's a project that needs escalations. I'll lend a hand in there. I do sales calls. So if we need to educate customers on how we work and how we could potentially help their business, I step in for that as well. And I also help unblock engineers. A key thing is unblocking engineers so they can really focus on coding. So our physical space is pretty interesting. It's very open concept. And we try to keep everybody in a tight-knit, working close together. So we try to discourage people from working from home. And some of the ways we do this is by bringing in breakfast every morning, having lunch and learns where food is brought in and people talk about various technology topics. We also try to have great machines and fast internet. And the location of our office is pretty close to public transit, so it increases our range at which people can commute. In terms of our hierarchy, it's pretty flat, or at least it used to be. At one point, it was basically just our head of engineering and 80 engineers. And when you have 40 different projects on the go, you might say, oh, that's kind of unmanageable. But it kind of goes back to how we empower our engineers to take responsibility and ownership over things. So this is kind of a mental model we use for responsibility and kind of how we want people to be more and more responsible and how the effect it has on the company. So if you look at number 6, you can basically drop problem on the other party's desk and signal helplessness. So obviously this isn't really productive and doesn't really help anybody. The next step in the ladder is ask other party to solve a problem, but take notes and make sure that you want to learn for the next time. So you're obviously trying to be more responsible, but you might not have the context to solve the problem. Number 4 is describe a problem to the other party and ask for specific help in structuring it. So here you're almost kind of pairing with somebody on a problem. The third rung is generate options for other party and ask the other party to make a choice as to what option they want to go with for solving a problem. Number 2 is provide options for other party and provide your own recommendation. But the key thing is number 1, which is where you consider all options, you make a decision, and then you just tell everybody what you've done. And the key thing and why we want people in our company to be at that number 1 level is that you don't end up being dependent on somebody else to make a decision. So it allows you to move fast. But you're also keeping people in the loop as to the decisions you're making. Another thing is you can also think of decision-making and management on a spectrum. So on one end, you have complete freedom, which can be a little chaotic. And on the other end, you have strict frameworks and policies in place, which can, making decisions make it a little slow. So what we do is we try to push things as close to the freedom end of spectrum without it getting too chaotic. So we have lightweight approval process just to kind of give a little bit of guidance to people as to how they should make their decisions. We try not to have any policies. And also another thing is we also try to do management by walking around, which is basically, if you need to talk to somebody about something, go up and talk to them in person, especially if they're in the same building. We try to avoid, calling people or instant messaging or emails as much as possible. Another thing we promote is something we call a do-ocracy. So sometimes when it comes to making decisions, you can deliberate over things a little too long. And again, this can be a slow process, and can make it difficult to be agile. So do-ocracy is basically, just make a decision, whether it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. You'll learn from it. So that's a little bit about how we work. I just want to talk a little bit about how we use Pivotal Tracker. So Pivotal Tracker is our Agile project management tool. So basically what happens is when we start a project, we take all the features that we have for that product and we put it in the icebox. And every week we take a set of stories and we move it in the backlog. And we rate those stories basically from 1 to n in terms of how complex they are. And over time you end up with a velocity and you can see how you're tracking in terms of progress for that project. It's real-time updating, and it's also very collaborative. So a client can go in there, they can at any point in time see exactly what's going on in the project, and they can provide comments and feedback. So now, in terms of communication, an important part of our communication is mailing lists. So we make sure that all the important stakeholders from the client end, as well as from Pivotal Labs, are on those mailing lists. And we make it mandatory that all emails go out to that mailing list. And what it does is it provides complete transparency to all parties involved as to what's going on in that project in terms of communications. In addition, we also have those mailing lists archived. So if somebody new is coming onto the project, they can see a full history of communication for that project. We also do mandatory weekly story acceptances. So whatever you've built throughout that week, you eventually sit down in a meeting with the client and you go over each story, and the client will either accept it, meaning that it's to their liking, or they'll reject it and provide feedback, and then that'll get incorporated into the next sprint. And another key thing in how we work in terms of communication is we make sure that on the client side of things, there's a single product owner. And the important thing about this is it's similar to why we do duocracy, is basically if there's multiple people trying to make decisions on the other end, on the client end, you can kind of get some inconsistent direction. So having a single product owner to accept and reject and to give direction on things makes the process a lot easier. So another key component to our success is pair programming. So why do we pair program? There's a pretty long list, but I'll go over a couple of them, a couple of the key points. So pair programming looks something like this, or this. That's a standard pair programming layout. And what we try to do in general is if there's multiple pairs on a project, we'll have them sit all together so that they can communicate more effectively. So one of the reasons we pair program is because it results in improved engineering quality. So you can think of it, everybody has a different skill set and ability. You can have somebody that's really strong in their knowledge of databases and somebody who's really strong in their knowledge of algorithms. And when you pair them together, they're both going to be writing code that is proficient in databases and algorithms. And not only in that, but when they split off to go work on other projects, you kind of have now two people who are knowledgeable both in databases and algorithms. So you get some general knowledge sharing there. In addition to that, you also have two people viewing a problem in a different way, so you come up with more alternatives. And then you can jointly decide on what kind of option you want to go with when solving a problem. Another reason we pair program is because it results in development focus. So there's a thing called like pair pressure, which is when you're working with somebody on a problem, you kind of don't want to let them down. It's kind of like a team environment, kind of like if you're doing a group assignment in university, you're really sitting there trying to get things done together. And that's kind of the atmosphere. It's very, very intense and very exhaustive, but it's also very effective. Another reason we pair program is because it results in more readable code and more maintainable code. So as one person is driving and coding things out, you have another person who's navigating and essentially doing an implicit code review over what's being written. And you can catch bugs quicker and errors in logic much, much quicker as they're happening. Another reason we do pair programming is because it minimizes resolution time. So when you're programming by yourself, sometimes you can get really stuck on a problem and go down this rabbit hole and not realizing how much time you're actually wasting trying to solve this problem, when really what you should be doing is enlisting somebody's help. When you're pair programming, what will happen is either that person you're pairing with can help you, or they'll kind of pull you out of this rabbit hole and say, hey, maybe we should get somebody else's help on this. So that happens a lot quicker with pairing. Here are some examples of some pair programming best practices. So in general, you should always be communicating. It's a really good sign of effective pairing when two people are talking frequently. And you should also be listening to your pair and hearing them out for their entire implementation when they're explaining how to approach a problem. Some quick wins. So when debugging, you can encourage the explanation of bugs to each other. You can take breaks. And you can also encourage and praise humility and egoless programming. because I mean, the goal is to kind of learn from each other. It's very much a team-oriented atmosphere. So that's pairing. And I like to talk a little bit about how we run projects in general. So we have a daily cadence and a weekly cadence. And our daily cadence is primarily focused on keeping everybody internally at our company in sync. And the weekly cadence is more to keep ourselves and the client in sync on project stuff. So our daily cadence, basically your pair programming, we do test-driven development, as well as, and test-driven development. We're working basically 9 to 6. So you come in, you grab some breakfast, then we have our morning stand-up. And our morning stand-up is basically company-wide, and it's an avenue for people to share, what's going on in the tech world that day or that week. Then after that, breakfast goes away, and then we jump into platform stand-ups. So the platform stand-ups are specific for people to kind of vet issues that they're having on a specific technology. So there's, we have like an Android stand-up where people can come through, talk about problems they're having on their platform or their project, and hopefully help find solutions. And then after that, if you're on a large project, we typically do a project stand-up as well, to talk about project-related issues. And then after that, and then it's just on to coding for the rest of the day. Now, also when you're pair programming, it can be difficult to get away to do personal things throughout the day. So we have email stations set up around the office for when you want to check your personal email or do something really quickly. Our weekly cadence, basically, so every week you'll work on the stories you have for that week for the client, and then you'll do a weekly build. That build will then go to our QA department. And they'll basically go through the stories that have been done in Tracker, and assuming that they're all verified, it'll then go to the product QA. And what happens there is they go through the stories and they take a look at it more from a product perspective rather than a functional perspective. And assuming that goes through, then it eventually goes out to the client. And once it's out to the client, you have your story acceptance meeting, where you basically go through and they give you feedback on the stories that you completed for that week. And then you take that feedback and you go through and you do sprint planning for the following week. In addition to that, we also have an anchor status meeting. So for the 40 or so projects we have going on at any given time, basically we have the anchor, which is the technical lead for that project, come into our meeting and basically give us a status report. Do they need more resources? Do they need more pairs? Are they tight on timelines? Stuff like that. And in addition to that, we also do demos every Friday. So it's just another avenue for us to get feedback on the applications we're developing. So the way we take in projects and our project cadence is basically some clients may not have an idea or a rough idea of what they want to build. And what we do is we typically will start with those clients and do a discovery, kind of giving them a better definition of the product that they want to make and get a better idea, and have things a little more fleshed out. Then once we have a better defined product, what we do is we do an inception. So an inception is basically where they come in, we go through their goals and their risks, and kind of come up with a more defined feature set for the product that they want to build. And once that's done, we take that defined feature set or stories, and we put it in the icebox and Tracker. And that's kind of the starting point for how a project gets started. And then, from then on, it's just weekly sprints working on the stories that are in Tracker. Typically in Tracker, we also put in milestones. So, some clients, they might have exec demos or security reviews. So we put in milestones right in Tracker so that the development team knows when those milestones are coming up, and they can prepare for them. Then at some point, we'll do a feature freeze. So we'll freeze features, and we'll do probably around 2 to 4 weeks of QA, depending on the size of the project. And then we'll do a release candidate. And then basically the release candidate, assuming it goes through QA and passes QA, it'll go out to the App Store. And then once all that's done, we end up doing a project retrospective with the client. And this is a key meeting where a client is able to give feedback in terms of how the project was ran, things they liked, things that they think went well, things that they think we can improve upon. And it's really good for us to get that feedback so that we can improve our engagements or our future engagements. What are some things that are harder on mobile? Test-driven development is much harder on mobile than other platforms. There are some development frameworks out there that exist, but in general, it's a little bit more difficult just because of the nature of mobile development is more UI focused. And also continuously changing designs. Mobile is a very aesthetic medium, and it's very easy to want to change things, but it also has a lot of impact on the code that's being written. A little bit more on us. We have a very low attrition rate. We're also able to outrun other teams very quickly. In some of our projects, we end up being one vendor of multiple vendors working on different components. And a lot of the time what ends up happening, because of the speed at which we can build things, we end up outrunning them and having to help them to catch up. We also have very, very happy people. So to recap on how we work, we encourage autonomy as much as possible. Really that bottom-up decision-making, we're empowering engineers to make decisions and move quickly. We're very light on process, and we try to keep our hierarchy as flat as possible. And we really promote this thing called duocracy. We make use of Pivotal Tracker for managing our projects. And key to our communication are mailing lists, having a single product owner on the client end of things, and doing our sprint planning meetings and story acceptance. Again, pair programming is pretty core to how we work. It helps distribute the knowledge base of the engineers, helps produce more maintainable code, and it also increases the development focus. And also, the cadence at which we run things. We have our daily cadence, which is focused on us, keeping in the loop internally. We also have our weekly cadence, which is more to stay in sync with the client, and then our project cadence. So that's about it. If you have any questions, comments, or want to talk, I got my contact information up here. Thanks.